各位观众朋友们，大家好，欢迎收看 JxJ 论坛，由我 Jimmy 马健与我们的好朋友 Jim Noteware 为我们一起讨论这个礼拜的时事。Jim, how are you?
Oh, doing fine, Jimmy. Doing fine. Trying to make sense of all the changes going on in the world, which is the way we open our discussion almost every week. We keep saying things are getting crazier and crazier, and yet they continue to get crazier and crazier. So
it is. We live and learn, and we keep learning until we're in our grave. We still should be learning, right? I mean, there's just so much, but there's also so much beauty in the world. As you know, I have been going to Andy Anderson in Houston quite often in the past few weeks due to a family matter. And as we discussed, it is somewhere that I hope no one needs to go for any reason. But when you go there, you also see life. You see life and death. And when we talk about the elections that just ended midterm and the presidential election coming up and the headlines and the recession, the bear market, and then you look at the folks that are there at the cancer center. What really bothers me is a lot of these folks are older folks that are alone. There are no kids with them or anyone. And the hospital policy, they even offer caretakers to drive or take someone home. And it says very clearly on the release form that Uber drivers or professional drivers doesn't count. The hospital could provide for someone that you could pay for, because there's so many people that doesn't have immediate family or anyone that could care for them. Mm-hmm. And as we talk with some people, they tell me the same thing, that until you're there, you will not understand that. They want to live close to their family. You know, no matter how many friends they have or how comfortable their job is, as you get older or if you're infirm or illness, mm-hmm. you want to be somewhere because nothing beats family. And the American family, the nuclear family is eroding. It is the so-called, from the 50s and 60s, what do you think of as a traditional family? A church-based Christian family is gone. We're not agreeing or disagreeing what this is happening. You said something very interesting, Jim. What is your take on it? How did we end up here?
Well, yeah, I think it's been a long time coming. And you mentioned the American nuclear family. I think it's actually been more pronounced in Europe for a longer time as well. Most of the European countries, particularly the Northern European countries. And I'm not sure why it's all been that way, but it's definitely the case now. And as you know, I'm in the real estate business. And so we do lots of market research. Who are the people that are going to buy or rent our properties? And trying to understand who the customer is. And one of the things that has been very pronounced over the last 5 to 10 years and growing is the fastest growing type of household is single adults. And the average age of those single adults is dropping. In other words, more and more younger people are single adults living alone. Some of them get together and have roommates, but they're not in any kind of a relationship. It's really roommates of convenience. But basically, even though they may share an apartment or even more seldom share a house, from a household standpoint, they are, and the way they file taxes is single individuals, head of household. And my own view is that it's an expression of other social trends. People spend a lot of time on the social media rather than having more deep human relationships. I think in the last couple of years, it's accentuated by people working from home, where historically people found a lot of social support in their work environment, as well as other social environments like churches. Organized religion is declining in importance in people's lives. And for some reason, as you said earlier, the nuclear family is not as attractive to more and more people, or not as attractive attractive as it once was, particularly for younger people. And I can understand older people that may be widowed or may have gone through some difficulty in a divorce or other family issues when you get to be 50, 60, something like that, or even older. Not that that's good, but it is a little bit more understandable. The thing that I'm very concerned about is how a 25 or a 30-year-old will live the next 10 or 15 or 20 years alone. And one of the consequences of that is not only what I call significant or extreme loneliness on the part of people, and it is very significant, and I think there's mental illness that comes along with that, or social dislocation. But thinking about the long-term future of humanity, let alone our economy, people aren't having children as much as possible, or I think we actually need from a demographic and an economic standpoint. We're operating below replacement now. In other words, the population is shrinking, and there are major economic consequences for that. And you don't just turn that around quickly. I know Japan has had this problem for a very long time. It's well further along than us in that, and also China has had that, and we've talked about that before as well. Some of that was by government policy, where Japan, I don't think it was government policy. In fact, Japan has tried to reverse it by providing government subsidies and other support for people to have more children. But it has not been terribly successful in doing that. And in America, for the last 20 or 30 years, we've said, oh, well, it's okay if our existing population doesn't grow because we're growing by immigration and we're growing by the children of immigrants. Well, from a numerical standpoint, that was wise or occurring for a while, but now we're finding that the immigrants that come here 10 or 15 or 20 years later don't have as many children either. So I think that a lot of it has to do with the costs of living. And now it's being accentuated by student loans. And young people simply don't have the money to either afford a family or to convey the appearance of being able to afford a family. A young man doesn't want to take on the responsibility of getting married and having a family if he is not economically strong enough to undertake that obligation. And so what do? They retreat. And I think it's a damn shame. And one of my concerns about this inflationary spiral that we've gotten into in the last year or two is that is going to accentuate the problems. It takes a long time for that data to appear to be able to make economic sense and conclusions out of it. But I think the market research that I referred to a few minutes ago is documenting proof of it, and it is a very difficult time. One of the other aspects that I saw, and I've seen this firsthand, was when I was housing director for the city of Houston 10 years ago. We dealt with poverty in a lot of different ways, and a lot of poverty is associated with certain kinds of housing. And there were many, many, many elderly people that we dealt with who may have had children, but they were living alone. And as they got weaker in their old age, many of them did not get out at all. Their houses were falling into disrepair, and in some cases became actually dangerous. And let's say an elderly widow, somebody in their late 70s, 80s, something like that, that even if they had family, their adult children were not coming around to take care of them. Why? We speculate answers, but every family is different. But unlike, say, the Asian culture, which you and others have taught me a lot about, not only do we not respect our elders, maybe like we did a generation or 2 or 5 ago, but we tend to abandon them. And it really is sad. I mean, the things I'm talking about are very widespread. These are major issues. And it's one of the reasons why, as a real estate developer, I am not in favor of segmentation of people by age. Well, what does that mean? We all talk about integration or segregation, and we all talk about diversity. Well, one of the things that we do is have active adult communities. We have assisted living facilities. In other words, we're segmenting people. We're making it easier for the younger part of the family to kind of just discard the older people that need a little more help and caring. Where, again, a few generations ago, elderly people lived with their adult children and their grandchildren. And I would argue, when I was growing up, I had wonderful relationships with all 4 of my grandparents. And it made my life a lot richer. I just think if that isn't continuing, young children are missing out on another form of parenting and support groups. So I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, I wanted to add on to it. What you said is absolutely true. Is concerning, but it is happening to all the industrialized nations, specifically the more. Yes, Japan is a perfect example. I've been following for a while. Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, they all give incentives, especially island nation states. It's upside down, right? Each elderly person will require, for a viable economy to have growth, you will need a certain number of next generation, younger people to support that. And it's upside down. The countries that are still trying to make it, like Indonesia, Vietnam, is the opposite. They have a lot more younger generation, and that's why they have growth. What's happening here, it is many factors. It's not just one. Whether it's religion or social media, the pressures, and really the wealth divide. This happens. This is in China. They have a specific term for this generation. It's called the lay down generation. They're tired of fighting the corporate ladder. They're tired of trying to get a mortgage, tired of trying to buy a car, trying to get married. So they just lay down and say, I just want to make whatever I can, whatever money that's enough. I'm going to stay with my parents. I'm going to stay online and live bare necessity and minimum. And because they feel like the resources have been taken up, that there's no matter how hard, which I could, a lot of the older folks will say, hey, this generation is, they're not working hard. They don't have the same ethic. They don't have the same discipline, or they're spoiled. No, they just want to try just as hard as, they don't want to move back to their parents' basement, but it's not the same. Yes, there's always exceptions, right? Generally, I mean, we're still in the United States. If you work hard, you'll make it. But it's different. Before, a plumber or teacher could make enough money to raise a family of 4. And now you need side hustles. I mean, a teacher could barely afford to even live, or working for church, and I see that at my particular church is we want young families to join. And luckily our church is a younger church, and we do. But I know a lot of churches also is having the same problem with their followers being aged out, right? There's not enough of the next generation joining the church. And it's a shame, whether it's your priest or pastor or your imam, whatever it is, it provides you a guidance. How do I say this? Elder family members sometimes will give you pressure, and when you're younger, you think it's unwanted. But in a way, it's also to guide you and to remind you, it's time to settle down, it's time to raise a family and whatnot. And our culture now is here in the United States is almost encouraging you to not have that, because you want to see seen hip or whatever fits the current social perception. I'm not saying it's wrong or right. It's just a shame seeing the folks. I always tell people that it is the greatest generation that made us who we are today. Go to the greatest generation, starting from before World War II all the way till the 70s. And you're part of the greatest generation. There was nothing. You built from nothing and created this world. We're living in unprecedented times. In a snapshot, we go, wow, there's inflation and bear market, and we're in a recession and there's war. But if you look back, these last 20, 30 years, there has been more peace than ever in humanity's history. There's less poverty, more clean water than, yes, there's still a lot of work. But there's also so much advances in technology that has the playing field.
Much so. And it's not just advances in the, quote, developed countries. That's well known, relatively easy measured, etc. But the advances are worldwide. Even countries who are, quote, developing or impoverished are a whole lot better today than they were 50 years ago. So
I mean, there's always been pain and suffering in human history.
Always.
But at this point, we really are at a good place if we could just continue down this path. But in the same way, we don't want to get blinded by these short-term, headline-grabbing, divisive tactics. We got to stay in the middle. We have to see different perspectives, and that leads into what's going on in the headlines is our midterm elections. Former President Trump has chosen the worst time to announce again, and it's met with a lot of ridicule, right? Even with Rupert Murdoch's own publications. We see how power is power. And when you don't have it, you will be abandoned, just like how he's abandoned and thrown away human beings once he's used and went through them. Human capital should not be treated this way. Am I right? It's not how I wouldn't treat my partners and employees or friends this way, or family. So
no. I look, I can't figure out what's going through that man's mind. I think the reason he's so aggressive is because he too is feeling abandoned. Unless he has 5 headline stories in the New York Times on the front page every morning, he feels nobody loves him or cares about him anymore. I'm being half facetious, but not very much. He wants to be the center of attention. When he's not the center of attention, he says, "What about me?" And he does everything he can to get back into the center of attention.
There's no doubt that he is an egotistical maniac. One of the most narcissistic, sociopathic people that we've ever seen. Is a classic case, and misogynistic, sexist. But in the end, because he represented something that does matter in our country, he hijacked it. So let's hope. Let's see. I think this is.
I think we just need to let it play out. And
I think he reaps what he sows, and he will have a taste of his own medicine very soon. I mean, in a way, if he didn't announce, then he will get away scot-free. I mean, he will get away with it. But because now he's doing this, it's almost like he's asking for it. He really is asking for
it. Yeah. And most everybody, his advisors, I mean, he's going to
even his children, most of them has abandoned them.
Yeah, and
the smart ones.
He's going to have to bear the consequences of making his decision of what he did. I did not watch his speech on Tuesday night. I had no interest in doing it, and I've read somebody's review of it today that I respect, and he called it funeral. A funeral. In other words, it had the feeling of a funeral rather than a raucous, joyous occasion like most of his big rallies. But I don't know his selection of the candidates, his placement, and there's so many things that went wrong that are not apparent to the average observer. That it's even worse than the publicity he's received. So
the fact is he's being called out. He's lost 2018, 2020, and 2022. He's cost the Republicans 3 elections. Yeah. How many more could you let him How many more could the conservatives let Trump lose more? How many more could they afford to lose, as a democracy?
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, we could go on and on, but it's well documented in the press just since 9 or 10 days ago, when the elections occurred, and you could see it coming. The polls even had it. Over the last couple of years, the polls have been inaccurate and they understated the Republican vote, but this time they were understating the Democrat vote. The Democrats won. I mean, there were some very significant celebrated Republican victories, like certainly in Florida and also New York State. But by and large, Democrat candidates won very consistently. And the red wave that was talked about before the election simply did not materialize. And most of it was because of voter turnout and ticket splitting. Many Republicans just simply were not motivated to come out and vote, and so they didn't. And then those that did come voted for some Republicans, but they also voted for some Democrats. And that was the case in many of the races where Trump's handpicked candidates lost. They weren't supported even by their own base, or not sufficiently supported by their own base. But the biggest issue is the Republicans did not appeal to the people in the middle. There's Republicans on the right, there's Democrats on the left, but then there's a big open area in the middle called independents or undecided. And if you're going to win, you've got to appeal to that, because that's where the decision is made.
They got to recalibrate. You got to look at our local elections. Look at Harris County. There's lawsuits flying. Even the local news channels are focusing on the indictments and people around city council, people around the mayor's office, people around the county judge's office. I mean, what happened with the mayor's office is very surprisingly not headline grabbing. I mean, not a lot of people know what's even going on, that there's people very close to the mayor that has been charged, that has been proven to have graft and corruption. So the mayor's office is up for grabs, and there's a lot of people that are waiting to I mean, the fourth largest city in the United States. There's a lot of people waiting for this and trying to grab it. That's in 2 years, I believe.
Yeah, no, 1 year. 1 year.
One more year. That's right. It's 2023. I apologize.
The city elections are next year.
Yeah. So it's there's going to be a lot of
candidates are already jockeying for position. The races are informally starting now.
Already, yes, yeah. I'm hearing, I'm seeing it, and whether those lawsuits go anywhere, we just really want to have a peaceful and lawfully elected election and elected officials. That's all there is to it. Jim, it's getting cold in Houston,
thankfully,
which we need.
Finally.
And next week is Thanksgiving. Every year we will do our Thanksgiving episode will be about how thankful we are and what we're thankful for. So next week we'll see everybody, and I hope our audience would also think about what makes them thankful. And also, as I said at the top of the show, this is the time of the year to give whatever you can. Compared to past years, this is the time when it's hard for us, when it's going to be harder for everybody else. Right. So adopt a family, go through your local charities, do what you can, because there are a lot of folks out there that are hurting badly, and
there are. Yeah, there's no question about that. Yeah.
Do what you can.
But thank you for bringing it up, Jimmy. And those of us who are fortunate have a great deal to be thankful for.
And next week, we'll discuss what we're thankful for this week. Hopefully, between now and next week, we have less anxiety-inducing headlines and worse news.
At least the secular holidays is something that everybody can celebrate together.
Well,
everybody loves to eat turkey, so That's always a favorite.
That once a year.
Everybody loves a 4-day weekend.
Is absolutely true. And stay warm, stay thankful, and we'll see everyone next week, Jim.
Good. Thank you, Jimmy, very much.
Take care.